Zara was the kind of girl who made people pause in awe. Her skin shimmered like it drank light from the stars. Her smile, though rare, could soften even the coldest soul. Yet none of it mattered at home. Her mother, Mama Ronka, often said, "What use is beauty if it can't put food on the table?" Her father, Pa Sani, barely acknowledged her unless to bark an order. Her sisters, BC and Tenny, enjoyed privileges. They wore bright wrappers and adorned themselves with shiny beads for market days. Zara, on the other hand, wore tattered clothes and hauled water daily. Her hands grew coarse, her feet cracked from trekking barefoot on the scorching earth. The goats grazing behind their hut became her only companions. At mealtimes, Zara waited until everyone had their fill, then got the scraps. She trained herself not to cry, only to smile and murmur, "Thank you," even as her stomach twisted painfully. Suitors came from distant villages, drawn by her beauty, but Mama Ronke always demanded outrageous dowries. "She's the jewel of Nsukwa," she would declare. "If you can't bring 20 goats, go elsewhere." Eventually, they stopped coming. One afternoon, Mama Ronke returned from the market, beaming. "Zara, pack your things," she commanded. "You have a husband now." Zara blinked. "Who?" "A farmer named Toba. He has a bad leg, but at least he agreed to marry you without much payment." Zara's lips quivered. "A crippled man? Mama!" "Silence," her mother snapped. "You should be grateful you're leaving this house. It's shameful for a grown girl to still eat under her father's roof." That night, Zara cried into her pillow until it was soaked. No one came to console her. She was simply a burden, a beautiful burden no one wanted to bear. Toba's hut stood at the farthest edge of the village, isolated among withering cassava plants and wild grass. His right leg dragged behind him, with each step, making a soft scraping sound against the dry earth. Children pointed and laughed, calling him Baba Asa, even though he was barely 30. Yet Toba toiled from dawn till dusk, planting, watering, and harvesting with steady hands and a determined heart. His palms were thick with calluses, his back often stiff with pain. But he never begged. Each evening, after tending his fields and boiling yam, he would sit by a small fire and write letters in a worn brown notebook. Letters addressed to a mother long buried beneath the soil of another village. "They mocked me again today, Mama," he once scribbled, "but I will endure. One day someone will see me, not my limp." One morning, Mama Bintu from the market approached him with news. "A family is offering their daughter," she said. "Beautiful girl, but they say she's lazy and proud." Toba's brow arched. "What is her name?" "Zara," she replied. Toba remembered her, sweat glistening on her forehead, a cloth tied tightly around her hair, fetching water as though she carried the weight of the world. She hadn't noticed him then, but he had seen her sadness. He smiled faintly. "Tell them yes." The wedding was a muted affair. No music, no colorful dancing. Just a weary-looking girl in borrowed beads and a limping farmer beside her. Zara never lifted her eyes once during the ceremony. The villagers whispered and gossiped among themselves. "Beauty and the beast," they said. "Surely she must have cursed herself to end up here." Toba paid them no mind. His gaze was fixed on her, not her body, but her eyes, her hands, the weary way she held herself like one who had already lost everything. After the ceremony, Toba carried a battered cooking pot and a worn sleeping mat. Zara followed, her tears silent as they walked toward his hut. Surprisingly, the hut was clean, sparse but neat, a mat neatly laid in one corner, a small wooden table hewn by his own hands, and a modest fire pit outside. "You can have the mat," he said softly. "I'll sleep outside." Zara looked at him, her eyes meeting his for the first time. "I don't need your pity," she whispered. Toba smiled sadly. "Neither do I." That night they slept under different roofs, their bodies apart but their hearts heavy with the same ache. The first morning at Toba's hut was heavy with silence. Zara sat stiffly at the edge of the mat, staring at her roughened hands. Sleep had eluded her. Her body remained in place, but her spirit wandered far from this new life. Beyond the thin walls, the sounds of the world continued. Birds chirped, a rooster crowed nearby. Life moved on, indifferent to her sorrow. She caught the smell of smoke and reluctantly stepped outside. Toba was there, balancing a blackened kettle in one hand while stirring a pot of steaming pap with the other, his limp barely slowing him down. He looked up at her and said kindly, "Good morning." Zara said nothing. She merely turned her face away. Toba didn't seem hurt. "I made pap. It's hot. You can eat first." "I'm not hungry," she muttered, heading back toward the hut. Toba simply nodded. "All right." Days crept by, blending into one another. Zara kept to herself, performing small chores silently, while Toba spent his hours in the fields, returning each evening with dirt-stained hands and a quiet weariness. One afternoon, rain thundered down from the sky, turning the earth into a muddy swamp. A leak sprouted in the hut's corner. Zara rushed to place a clay bowl beneath it, but slipped on the wet floor, her elbow smacking hard against the ground. For the first time, Toba's voice rose sharply. "Zara!" He dropped his stick and stumbled toward her, forgetting his limp. His hands trembled as he knelt beside her. "Are you hurt?" She blinked up at him, bewildered by his concern. "Why do you care?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm just the girl you pitied into marrying." Toba shook his head fiercely. "No, Zara. You're the woman I chose with both eyes open." Tears welled up, but she turned her face away. "You don't even know me," she said bitterly. "I know you're broken," Toba answered quietly, "because I know what it feels like to be broken too." One tear escaped down her cheek. And for the first time since she arrived, Zara realized she was not as alone as she thought. The sun rose lazily over the village the next day, casting a soft gold over the cracked ground. Zara decided she would go to the market. It had been weeks since she last ventured into the village square, and though her heart trembled, Toba had pressed a few coins into her hand the night before with a gentle smile. "I trust you," he had said simply. She wrapped her faded scarf around her head, tied her plain wrapper carefully, and set out. Every step toward the market felt heavier than the last. As she walked, eyes followed her. Lips whispered, "Is that not Zara? Look how far she has fallen, married to Toba the cripple. Beauty wasted on poverty." Their words sliced through her like knives, but she didn't stop. She kept her chin low and focused on her task. Salt, palm oil, a little pepper. She finished quickly and turned to leave. Then a voice, too familiar to ignore, rang out. "Zara!" It was Halima, her childhood friend, loud and cruel now, speaking for the crowd to hear. "Is it true? You really married that man? That limping farmer?" Zara turned slowly. Her heart raced, but her voice was calm. "Yes," she said simply. Halima threw her head back in laughter. The village flower now wilted and thrown to a cripple. "Ah, life is funny." Zara said nothing. She walked away, her steps slow but steady. Yet as soon as she reached the bush path out of sight from the crowd, she crumpled. Her basket dropped. Her hands covered her face. She wept bitterly, the humiliation burning hotter than the noon sun. When she stumbled back into their hut, Toba looked up from peeling yams. His eyes instantly caught the redness in hers, but he said nothing. Later that evening, Zara found a small wooden stool, beautifully carved, sitting outside the hut, a gift. She knew it was Toba's way of saying, "I see you. I care." And though no words were spoken, her heart softened a little more toward the man who had chosen her, even when the world turned its back. It was an ordinary morning when trouble came knocking. Uninvited, loud, and bearing the weight of the past. Toba had gone to tend his small farm, leaving Zara behind to sweep and clean their modest home. She was bent over the broom when a sharp, commanding voice rang out from outside. "Zara, come out here this minute." Her heart thudded painfully against her ribs. She knew that voice, knew it too well. She wiped her hands hastily and stepped outside, only to find Mama Ronka standing there, arms crossed, anger radiating from her like a second sun. Beside her stood Bisi and Tenny, dressed in new flashy wrappers, each holding baskets laden with perfume, bread, and other market goods. Their faces wore smug, mocking smiles. "You look pitiful," Mama Ronka spat, her eyes sweeping over Zara's worn clothes and bare feet. "We gave you a chance to shine, and this is what you chose?" Zara lowered her gaze. "You forced me to marry him," she said quietly. Mama Ronke laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "So now it's our fault you're living in rags?" Tenny smirked. "You used to boast about being the jewel of Nsukwa. Now look at you, dusty, thin, and forgotten." Zara clenched her fists, but she refused to let them see her cry. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice steady despite the pain. "We came for what's ours," Mama Ronka snapped. "Toba promised he would help fix the family's broken well. Where's the money? Was it all a lie?" Zara's eyes widened. "He never promised that," she cried. Mama Ronka snorted. "Figures. A cripple who can't even fix his own roof." At that moment, Toba returned, dragging his hoe behind him, his shirt soaked with sweat. He paused when he saw them, reading the tension in the air instantly. "Good afternoon, Mama," he greeted politely, his voice calm. Mama Ronke hissed, "Keep your greetings. Just make sure your poverty doesn't infect us." Toba said nothing. He simply leaned on his stick, watching silently as they turned and stormed away, their baskets swinging. After they left, Toba sat outside the hut for a long while, staring out at the empty fields, the sun sinking slowly behind him. And Zara, standing quietly by the doorway, realized with a heavy heart that some wounds from the past would never truly heal, not even with time. The morning after her family's cruel visit, Zara woke to find the fence behind the hut, broken dry sticks scattered, and a gap wide enough for goats to sneak through. She frowned, tying her wrapper tightly around her waist as she stepped outside. Toba was already there, crouched low, struggling to mend the fence with his rough hands. His injured leg dragged awkwardly, and fresh bruises darkened his knuckles. He winced but kept working, refusing to stop. Zara felt a pang of guilt twist in her chest. Without hesitation, she knelt beside him. "Let me help," she said, her voice soft but firm. Toba shook his head lightly. "It's all right, Zara. I can manage." But she was already gathering sticks, her fingers moving swiftly. "You've done enough alone. This is my home too now," she murmured. Together they patched the fence, weaving dry sticks and tying them tightly with rough ropes. Sweat trickled down their faces, but neither complained. They worked side by side, their silence comfortable for the first time since she arrived. As they worked, a boy from the village passed by, his mouth quick and cruel. "Zara, helping cripple fix fence? Wonders will never end," he jeered loudly. Toba flinched, staring down at his hands. But before he could say a word, Zara stood up and faced the boy boldly. "And you," she snapped, "what are you doing for your own family besides running your mouth like a market parrot?" The boy blinked, stunned, then stumbled away without another word. When Zara turned back, Toba was staring at her, not with pity, but with something warmer, deeper. "Thank you," he said, his voice hoarse. She smiled faintly, brushing dirt from her wrapper. "You're not weak, Toba. They just refuse to see you." He looked away, but her words planted a seed deep inside him, a seed of hope he had long forgotten. And though neither of them said it aloud, in that simple act of mending a broken fence together, they had begun to stitch the broken parts of their own hearts too. The days that followed blurred into a quiet rhythm, yet one heavy cloud hovered over their tiny home. Zara's health. It started with small things, a persistent cough, dizziness, a flush on her cheeks. Then one morning, Zara couldn't rise from the mat. Her body trembled, her forehead burning with fever. Toba rushed around the hut, searching for anything that could ease her suffering. But the truth was harsh. Their savings had dwindled to almost nothing. Their stores were nearly bare. Zara tried to sit up, her voice hoarse and broken. "I'm sorry, Toba," she whispered. "I'm a burden you don't deserve." Toba knelt beside her, wiping her brow gently with a damp cloth. His crutches leaned against the wall, forgotten in his desperation. "Don't ever say that," he said, his voice thick with emotion. You're my wife, Zara. My heart chose you, and I will fight for you no matter what it costs. But even as he spoke the words, he knew love alone would not buy medicine. Love would not feed a fevered body. Come, Toba thought hard. He had heard rumors that Mama Ronke had been lending money to villagers at high interest rates. Despite all the humiliation, despite the certainty of rejection, he made his decision. Before sunrise, he dressed quickly, grabbed his crutches, and set off for Zara's childhood home, the heavy silence of desperation following him with every painful step. When he reached their compound, he heard laughter from inside, careless and rich. He knocked. The door swung open, and there stood Mama Ronke, her face twisting into a smirk at the sight of him. "What do you want, cripple?" she sneered. Toba swallowed his pride. "Please," he said, bowing his head. "Zara is very sick. We have nothing. I'm begging you, help us." Mama Ronke crossed her arms. "Help you?" she scoffed. "You should have thought about that before stealing our daughter. You think we have money to waste on failures?" Before Toba could reply, Pasani appeared behind her, his face hard and cold. "Leave, fool, before I call the guards." Without warning, Mama Ronke picked up a bucket of water by the door and hurled it at him. The cold water drenched Toba from head to toe, soaking his torn shirt and thin trousers. "Get out," she barked, "and don't ever show your face here again." The door slammed shut. Toba stood there for a moment, shivering not from the water, but from heartbreak. Slowly he turned and limped back down the road, the weight of his failure heavier than the crutches under his arms. When he returned home, Zara struggled to sit up, her eyes wide with hope. Did you get help?" she asked weakly. Toba knelt beside her and took her hand gently. "No," he said, his voice breaking. They turned us away." Zara's eyes filled with tears, but she only whispered, "I'm sorry," over and over. Toba leaned his forehead against her hand. "No, Zara," he said quietly, "you are not the one who should be sorry." In that moment, their pain wrapped them even tighter together, a bond forged not just by love, but by the fire of shared suffering. That night, while Zara shivered under the thin covers, Toba sat outside under the dark sky, his crutches resting beside him. His heart was a battlefield, between hopelessness and the stubborn will to save the woman he loved. He made up his mind. He would find a way, no matter what it cost him. At dawn, he limped into the village square. He had heard whispers about a man needing urgent help clearing a plot of land before the rains came. Despite his injured leg, despite the pain threading through every step he took, Toba approached the farm owner. "You sure you can do this?" the man asked skeptically, eyeing Toba's crutches with disdain. Toba nodded once. "Just show me where to start." The work was brutal. Every swing of the hoe tore at his muscles. Every step through the thick, stubborn earth was a battle. The sun beat down mercilessly, and dust coated his body like a second skin. But he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. For Zara. By nightfall, when the last of the stubborn roots had been uprooted and the soil was finally cleared, Toba collapsed against a tree, barely able to breathe. His palms bled. His legs screamed in agony. But the farm owner approached, holding out a small leather pouch filled with coins. "You earned this," he said, a touch of reluctant respect in his voice. Toba bowed his head, clutching the pouch tightly. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough for a little medicine, enough for a little food, enough hope to bring back to Zara. When he stumbled back into the hut, Zara was still lying weakly on the mat, her face pale and drenched in sweat. But her eyes widened when she saw the small bundle in Toba's hands, medicine and food, wrapped carefully in cloth. "You did this for me?" she rasped, her voice fragile. Toba knelt beside her, smiling despite the exhaustion pulling at every fiber of his body. "I will do whatever it takes, Zara," he said softly, pressing the cool cloth to her forehead. "You mean everything to me." Zara's tears fell freely as she reached out, her hand trembling, to touch his battered face. "You've already given me more than I ever deserved," she whispered. And you've given me a reason to keep fighting, Toba replied, his voice breaking with love and fierce devotion. Together they clung to each other in the dim light of their little home, two broken souls stitched together by sacrifice, pain, and a love that refused to surrender. The days that followed were slow, but each sunrise brought a sliver more light into their lives. The medicine Toba had worked so hard to buy began to ease the fever gripping Zara's frail body. Her strength returned in small, precious pieces, first the steadying of her breathing, then the soft color creeping back into her cheeks. By the end of the week, she could sit up without help. By the next, she could walk around the hut, her steps shaky but filled with new determination. Toba watched her quietly, awe and gratitude shining in his tired eyes. He never complained about the long days spent tending the farm alone or the nights when he still struggled to sleep from exhaustion. His heart found joy simply in seeing Zara alive and smiling again. When Zara was strong enough, she insisted on helping him in the fields. Together they toiled side by side, pulling yams from the stubborn soil, wiping sweat from their brows and laughing through their fatigue. Despite his limp, Toba worked harder than any man Zara had ever known. His hands, once scarred and bruised, became steady and sure. His spirit, once burdened by shame, now burned with renewed pride. One afternoon, as they both sat under a crooked mango tree to rest, Zara looked at him with deep affection. "You're getting stronger every day, Toba," she said, her voice filled with wonder. Toba chuckled breathlessly. "As long as you're with me, Zara," he replied, "I will keep finding the strength." Her heart melted at his words. She gathered the yams they had harvested into a basket. "Let me take these home first. I'll be back to help you finish," she said cheerfully. Toba nodded, giving her a warm, proud smile. "Be careful, my love." Carrying the heavy basket, Zara began her walk along the narrow village path. The weight pressed into her arms, but she bore it gladly. It was nothing compared to the burden she had already survived. As she neared the village square, she spotted a familiar cluster of women brightly dressed, their voices high and mocking. Ah, it was the same group who had sneered before. Their laughter sliced the air like knives as they noticed her. "See her," one called out loudly. "The cripple's wife, carrying yams like a market servant." More laughter. "She should have married Kwaku," another added. "At least he has 2 strong legs." Zara tightened her grip on the basket and quickened her steps. But one woman, bolder than the rest, stepped directly into her path and shoved her shoulder roughly. Caught off guard, Zara stumbled. The heavy basket tipped, and yams tumbled across the dusty road, rolling into puddles and weeds. The women's laughter roared like thunder behind her. "Look at her! Can't even carry food properly!" Zara's hands shook as she knelt to gather the scattered yams. Dust smeared her wrapper and clung to her skin. Their cruel words burned hotter than the sun overhead. Still, she bit her lip until she tasted blood, swallowed her humiliation, and silently picked up each fallen yam. No one helped. No one offered a kind word. When the basket was finally full again, she stood, her legs trembling, and continued her walk home. Behind her, the laughter faded, but the wound it carved into her heart stayed fresh and bleeding. Zara's arms ached as she pushed open the creaky wooden door of their hut. The basket of yams slipped from her fingers and landed heavily by the entrance. But it wasn't the basket that broke her. It was the memories, the cruel laughter, the mocking faces, the piercing words that crashed over her in a tidal wave she could no longer hold back. She slid down to the floor, her back pressed against the wall, her chest heaving with silent sobs. Hot, bitter tears streamed down her cheeks. She covered her face with trembling hands, ashamed to cry but powerless to stop it. She should have married Kwaku. At least Kwaku has 2 good legs. Poor woman, wasting her life with a cripple. Their voices echoed endlessly in her mind. She wept for the shame she couldn't hide anymore. She wept for the humiliation she couldn't erase. And most of all, she wept for Toba, the man who had given everything to love her, while the world continued to mock him without mercy. After a long while, when her sobs finally slowed, Zara dragged herself to the water pot. She splashed her face over and over, trying to scrub away the pain etched into her skin. She changed quickly into a clean wrapper, pulling herself together. She couldn't let Toba see her like this. She refused to add her broken spirit to the burdens he already carried. Forcing a small, shaky smile onto her lips, she left the hut and walked back toward the farm. As she neared the field, she spotted Toba bent over the yam mounds, his shirt clinging to his back with sweat, his limp more pronounced after a day of hard labor. When he saw her approaching, he straightened and wiped his brow. A tired but warm smile lit up his face. "Zara, my love," he called out, his voice hoarse from work but tender. "You stayed longer than I expected. Why the change of clothes?" Zara's throat tightened painfully. For a moment, she feared she wouldn't be able to hide her broken heart. But she forced the practiced smile again. "I spilled water on myself at home," she lied softly. "I had to change." Toba tilted his head slightly, studying her face with gentle concern. "Are you sure you're all right?" She chuckled, a thin, hollow sound. "Just tired," she said quickly. "Let's finish the work before the sun disappears." Toba hesitated for a heartbeat, sensing something deeper behind her words, but he trusted her and nodded. He reached out and squeezed her hand lightly. "Thank you, Zara, for always standing by me." She smiled, a real one this time, not because she wasn't hurting, but because in that moment she realized just how much she loved him. He was the reason she chose to keep fighting. He was the reason she could still smile through the pain. Later that evening, as the stars blinked into the darkening sky, they sat side by side outside the hut in silence. Zara turned to him, her voice soft with worry. "Toba, you've been quiet lately. What's wrong?" Toba stared into the night for a long moment. Then he turned to her, sorrow clouding his eyes, as though a secret too heavy to bear had finally risen to the surface. "Zara," he said, his voice hoarse, "there's something I must tell you, something I should have said long ago." The night air felt heavier as Toba shifted restlessly on his crutches. Zara leaned closer, her heart hammering in her chest. "What is it, Toba?" she asked gently. "You can tell me anything." Toba took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling as he wrestled with words that had been locked away for too long. "I'm not the man you think I am," he said quietly. "Not completely." Zara frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" Toba closed his eyes for a moment, gathering strength. Then the words tumbled out. "I'm not poor, Zara. I'm not crippled either. Not really. I've been pretending." The world tilted beneath her. She blinked, staring at him in stunned silence. "You're not crippled?" she echoed, barely above a whisper. "No," Toba said, his voice thick with emotion. "I can walk properly. I faked the limp. I faked hardship." Zara's breath caught painfully in her throat. "Why? Why would you do that?" Toba looked up at her, his eyes raw and pleading. "My family. We're among the wealthiest in this region. I grew up surrounded by riches, titles, and people who only saw my money. Not me. I was tired of it. Tired of being treated like a prize to be won." He took a trembling step closer. "I wanted to find someone who loved me for who I am, not for the wealth attached to my name. So I left it all behind, came here, and lived as a simple farmer. I needed to know that if someone chose me, it would be from my heart, not my pockets." Zara stood frozen. Every memory, every moment they had shared flashed before her eyes, the poverty, the struggles, the humiliation, all of it real for her, but built on a lie. Tears filled her eyes as her voice broke. "You lied to me, Toba. You made me live this hard life thinking we were fighting together. Meanwhile, you had everything." Toba reached for her, desperate. "I never wanted to hurt you, Zara, I swear. Everything I felt for you, everything we built that was real. You are the only truth I've ever known." Zara stepped back, shaking her head. So all the shame I endured, the humiliation, it was for nothing? She whispered. No, Toba said fiercely. It was to prove something. That love could exist without gold chains and fat purses. I needed to believe it. I needed to find someone like you. But you didn't trust me enough to let me choose with the truth, Zara whispered bitterly. Toba fell to his knees, dropping his crutches entirely. I was wrong, Zara, he said, tears slipping down his cheeks. I was selfish. I thought I was protecting my heart, but in doing so, I hurt yours, and that is the greatest regret of my life. The silence between them stretched painfully. Zara turned away, her arms folded tightly across her chest as her heart crumbled anew. I don't know if I can forgive this, Toba, she said, her voice barely audible. I don't know if I can trust you again. Toba bowed his head. I understand, he said brokenly. Take all the time you need, Zara. I'll wait, no matter how long it takes. I'll wait for you. Without another word, Zara turned and walked into the darkness, her tears unseen under the cover of the night. And Toba remained on the ground, the weight of his choices finally crashing down on him. The days that followed moved like slow, heavy rain clouds. Zara kept to herself, her mind a whirlwind of emotions, love, anger, betrayal, longing. She spent hours wandering through the fields, thinking, questioning, remembering. She recalled Toba's hands rough from labor, steady in their touch, his quiet laughter, the way he never once treated her with anything less than kindness, even when he owed her no explanations. But then she remembered the lie, the heavy, deliberate lie that had been woven through every part of their life together. Could she really trust again? Could she rebuild a future on broken foundations? Toba, for his part, kept his distance. He didn't push. He didn't plead. He simply waited, working the fields, tending the home, and each night sitting outside their little hut with a single candle flickering beside him, a silent prayer written on his heart. One evening, as the horizon blushed purple and gold, Zara found herself standing before him. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was steady. Toba, she called softly. He looked up, hope flashing through his tired eyes. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to speak from the raw truth inside her. I don't know how to forgive you completely, she admitted, but I know this. I love you. I have loved you through every hardship, every humiliation. And despite everything, I can't imagine my life without you. Toba rose slowly to his feet, his hands trembling with emotion. Zara, he breathed, you are my heart, my soul. I swear on everything I have, I will spend every day proving my love to you. No more lies, no more secrets. Tears shimmered in Zara's eyes as she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. And in that embrace, fierce, broken, beautiful, they began to heal. They didn't speak again that night. They didn't need to. Their hearts spoke the language that had carried them through storms and darkness. The language of forgiveness, of second chances, of a love that, though battered, refused to die. In the months that followed, Zara and Toba rebuilt their life from the ashes of broken trust. Brick by brick, word by word, touch by touch. Toba showed her the man he truly was, a man willing to trade riches for a simple smile, a man who would carry the weight of the world on his back just to see her laugh. They built a larger, sturdier home together. The farm flourished. Their laughter returned, bright and unashamed. And in the deepest part of Zara's heart, a new truth took root sometimes. Love wasn't about perfection. It was about choosing each other, again and again, even when it hurt. The seasons changed, bringing harvest after harvest. Zara and Toba's home blossomed, not with wealth alone, but with laughter, hard work, and an unshakable bond that even betrayal could not destroy. They expanded their farm together, turning the once barren land into a sea of green yams, maize, cassava. Neighbors who once mocked Toba now tipped their hats respectfully. Women who once sneered at Zara now watched her with quiet envy. One bright morning, Toba surprised Zara by leading her up a gently sloping hill far beyond their farm. At the top stood a breathtaking sight, a mansion, tall and proud, like a king's crown against the sky. Wide glass windows caught the sunlight. Broad verandas wrapped around the house. Soft carpets covered the floors, and the scent of fresh paint lingered in the air. Zara gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Toba, is this?" Toba smiled, his eyes glinting with joy. "Our home," he said simply, "built with my real hands and my real heart." They walked through the halls together, halls that echoed with the promises they had made and kept. In the living room, Zara ran her fingers over the fine wooden furniture. She turned to Toba, her heart swelling. "Can you believe this is ours?" she whispered. Toba chuckled warmly. "Sometimes I think I'm still dreaming." "But if it is a dream, Zara, I never want to wake up." They sat down together, hands locked, hearts wide open. "What do you see in our future, my love?" Zara asked softly. Toba gazed at her, his voice steady and full of hope. "I see children," he said. "Laughter, little feet running through these halls, boys with your kindness, girls with your fire." Zara smiled shyly. "I hope we have a daughter first. I'll braid her hair just like Mama used to braid mine. And I'll teach our sons to be strong but gentle," Toba added proudly. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the breeze whisper through the open windows, feeling the deep, peaceful rhythm of a life built on something far stronger than gold. One day, Toba promised, they would travel beyond the hills to the vast markets of the cities, and maybe even to the endless ocean Zara had only heard about in stories. And so, with dreams wrapped around them like a warm cloak, they stepped into a new life. But life is rarely without shadows. One morning, a figure from the past arrived, Kunle, Toba's estranged brother, full of envy and dark intentions. He came offering false smiles and hidden knives, whispering promises of a better life. But only if Zara chose him instead. Zara, strong and unwavering now, stood firm. "I chose Toba when he had nothing," she said calmly, "and I will stand by him now that he has everything. No wealth, no title, no temptation will change that." Stung by her rejection, Kunle left, never to return. Peace once again wrapped itself around their home. Not long after, Zara gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Their home, once filled with only quiet dreams, now overflowed with the giggles and cries of new life. Their hearts, once battered by storms of pain, now beat together in perfect harmony, stronger than pride, stronger than fear, stronger even than betrayal. And so, after all the battles, all the tears, all the broken promises healed by forgiveness, Zara and Toba truly found their forever. Not because they lived without hardship, but because they chose each other, again and again, no matter what came. And they lived not perfectly, but beautifully ever after. Was it about forgiveness, true love, or the courage to see beyond appearances? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Turn on notifications so you never miss another heartfelt story like this. Stay blessed and stay inspired.